Alright, this time on the Random Junk channel, I'm going to try and fix one of my own pieces. It's pretty rare anymore. But this is a tabletop piece that can run on batteries or power supply. And you turn it on. The only thing that works is the tree. I don't have the UV light, and my little ghosties aren't working. So, yeah, you can see the lights are right here. And then this and this are supposed to rock back and forth or go up and down. So, it does have screws on the bottom. So we're going to take it apart, see if we can find out what's going on with it. First things though, let's turn on some light so we can get some viewing in here. I don't remember the name of this piece. I've had it for a while, and it does not say on the bottom. It just says it's not a toy and use good batteries. And standard caution stuff. So, let's see if we can find out what's going on. Because not only is mine not working, but somebody from one of the groups isn't working either. And I didn't realize mine wasn't working, because along with everything else I have set up, yeah, I just saw it light up. I never paid attention that the animatronics had failed, as well as the UV lights. So, first thing I'm going to do is take the 4 screws out of the bottom. Just have to find the right size screwdriver. Well, I bought this used. Somebody apparently tried to work on this before me, because these screws are stripped out. Let me see what I can do. So, might have to pause while I get these 2 broken screws out. Yeah. I said I've never tried taking it apart. Might have to go get a drill bit or something to drill out the heads and then replace the screws. Let me try one more time. Sometimes with a blade screwdriver you can grab what's left of the strip screw and get it out. So I'm trying different blades. Nope. So I have 2 strip screws. The replacement screws aren't a big deal. I have lots of little hobby screws, but I'll try and show you. They're supposed to be Phillips and they're pretty much around. So I'm going to go out into the big workshop and grab a set of easy outs, and if they don't work, I'm just going to drill the heads off and then pull them out with a pair of pliers. So instead of wasting all this time, I shall return in just a moment. Okay, I've returned. I was successfully able to get 1 screw out. The other screw, as soon as I put the drill on it, it started to vibrate and snap the standoff. So, yeah, it happens. 3 screws is better than 0 screws, but I'll try and super glue the standoff back in and get a new screw for it anyway. But this thing's got a lot of stuff inside of it for such a small little unit. We have the battery box, of course, which is right here, hanging on these 2 blue wires. You have your power port, your off-on switch, your circuit board that controls most everything. You have a resistor board, which I'm assuming is going to be for the motor, most likely, maybe the lights, because of the size of these resistors. They're huge. The little resistors on here are 1/8 watts. These are probably 2-watt resistors, which means there's a load on them. You have a little drive motor and these old school plastic gearboxes. All the grease and then the mechanisms that pivot the ghost back and forth. So I'm going to give it some juice now that I have it open, and we'll see what's going on. Whole lot of nothing. I have no resistance from the motor. The gears are rotating when I move it by hand. Belt looks vulcanized. Probably it's also, yeah, because it's been sitting in one position for so long, it's not very tight. Alright. So, disconnect the power. I want to test that little motor. So I'm going to put power directly to the motor to test it. Getting my power supply ready. I had to disconnect this for something, a bigger power supply for a toy robot. So I'm going to drop it down to 2.5 volts and apply 2.5 volts directly to the motor. The motor has a diode, so if the polarity got reversed, it wouldn't send power to the motor. That's what this is right here, a reverse polarity. So the green wire I'm going to put as ground, and the red wire is the hot. So now I have movement. And that's a 3.5 volts. At 2.5 volts, it was just barely trying to turn. And my little ghosty is going up and down, and the other one's rocking. So if yours isn't functioning and it's going clack, 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 the gears inside this gearbox, you're going to have a broken gear. And if the guy on the side isn't rocking, you're going to have the eccentric's going to be bad. So this eccentric is causing this shaft to move side to side, which is this guy right here. This eccentric makes this guy go up and down behind the column. As you can tell by hooking up power to the motor, my tree lights up. Yeah, do that. The little lights light up, and then the UV lights are on. So I gotta check this circuit board and see what's going on there. I'm gonna turn on the light. Alright. Based on the fact that I don't have any clacking, clunking, or malfunction in the mechanism, I'm assuming the gears are good. Because it's a clear gearbox, you can see the majority of the teeth and it's easier to tell. What I'm going to do is trace the incoming power from the power port and see why it's only sending power to the center of the tree and not to everything else. So now the green, hey, look, everything just turned on. Okay, I have a bad connection because as I wiggle it, it goes on and off. So let me check the connections. There's the bad connection, I found it. I got a bad solder joint. I'm going to quickly hit the solder joint and fix it. I'll show you which joint it is. and then we'll go into how to take apart this gearbox. There's a really bad solder joint here with the lead-free solder. It's broke. Works. Yeah, so that is why I have an intermittent failure on this piece, is because I got an intermittent connection on a solder joint. There we go. So, this one wasn't too bad. This one was just a bad solder joint. This is the issue with using lead-free solder. Lead-free solder cracks and it breaks connection fast. So my ghost is going up and down. I got the light, the UV lights on. The lights in the tree are all working. Yep. And my ghosties are rocking and bobbing. So, now, let's take it all apart. This gearbox is hot glued in. So it means if you glue it back in the wrong spot, it's not going to work very well. It's probably going to bind. So you got to be careful on this one. But there are screws to disassemble the top of the box to get to the gears without breaking the glue free. So we're going to start there. On the very top, there's a screw here and a screw here. And that's what holds this plastic cap on. Look closely around the outer edge. If you have this piece, it's literally just hot glued in. Unless they put a screw underneath these glued on tombstones from the bottom coming in to keep it centered. If that glue ever fails, everything's going to shift and bind. And that's going to pose a problem. So this is old when they didn't put the casted standoffs in it, I guess you would call it. Because the newer plastic pieces all have castings. And this center section that's covered in moss, it's flaking off over my bench, is also screwed and glued in. You can see there's a glue seam with 4 screws. This center section actually comes out. So this is a multi-piece base, probably because at the time they used this base for different animatronic tabletop pieces. Or similar. It doesn't even have to be animatronic, maybe it's lit up. So they probably just use the same outer facade with a different center. So that's a 2 Phillips screwdriver. So I put all my stuff away when I went out to drill it out. Let me find my screwdriver. There we go. I said somebody's worked on this before me because I've never opened it, and this screw is also partially stripped. Partially stripped screw, if you use a blade screwdriver, you can usually get it out. Usually. Okay. The 2 screws are out. Now let me see how to take this eccentric off. Looks like it's plastic staked on. So this gear up here, the eccentric, This pivot is a plastic stake, so you don't want to break that because it'd be really hard to replace it. So let me see if I can get the gear to slide off the shaft. I'm going to use a set of 45-degree pliers, put pressure in the center and see if it starts to lift. It does, like so. So now the eccentric is free and I can move it off to the side. So this eccentric slides over that shaft. And once you get it up carefully so you don't break these plastic stakes. These plastic stakes that are right here, there are pivot points. It's a piece of plastic that sticks through, then they melt it like a plastic rivet. Unfortunately, when you break them off, you don't have any more material of plastic to restake down. The cover has clips on both sides, and I believe, we're going to find out in a second, you should be able to slide it out from under this gear that's right here, which makes this ghost go up and down. Mine is actually melted. There's a blob of hot solder that melted through this, which is making it slightly more difficult. So I don't know if that was from the factory or if that was when somebody tried to repair this before. I'm going to see if I can get the plastic to carefully separate without damaging it. Hopefully if any of you out there have this piece, you don't have the same problem. I'm not sure why, but there's a solder droplet that melted through the plastic and has bonded the top cap to the bottom. And I'm trying to carefully separate it. I'm not having much success. Actually, if your ghost is clacking, you don't have to take this gearbox out. I see where the failure point would be. Let me get my cover clip back on. I've removed off the motor, and I'll show you. Now I got a closer look at it. Here's the ghost that's going up and down. And if this is clacking because it can't grab, you have a worm gear right here. You can see it. I'm probably swapping it out with this light right here. So you have a worm gear right here. That worm gear's teeth are driven by this eccentric here, the one that I pried off. So either the teeth down in there, hopefully you can see them under my finger, or these teeth are broke. You have a broken tooth, or this gear or this eccentric is cracked. This is where it's going to get fun. If that eccentric's cracked, they don't make spare parts. And it's going to be really tough to fix. And I'm sorry, but if you know somebody with a 3D printer, you might be able to make one, but it's going to be really hard to fix this eccentric, especially if those teeth are cracked. It's not impossible. There's multiple ways you can try it. One way is to find that gearing. It's on the inside of that eccentric. I'm trying to get it back in the camera. See the gears on the inside teeth? And then cut those teeth off and glue this eccentric onto that other gear and then press it on. Use a hard glue like Gorilla. If this piece is broke, which is the which is a worm gear or ring gear, they do sell kits that have different size ring gears. We just have to find one that has the same size thread, because everything inside this gearbox is driven by the motor, and then everything outside the gearbox, which is the two ghosts, are driven off of this one eccentric. This is like how they make oscillating fans work. They use an eccentric mechanism that's on the motor, so the fan goes back and forth. It's actually a circular disc with a shaft off-centered, and then it rotates, which pulls the fan left and right, left and right. So it's a technology that's been around for a really long time. So, but they're metal. This is plastic. I'm going to say that if it's probably failed, it's probably this gear here, which is your ring gear. To replace that, or to get to it, I'm not going to lie, you're going to have a lot of fun. It's not going to be easy. That was sarcasm. You're going to have to slide this eccentric off of this side of the shaft and get it out of the way, flop it over, and then try and push the pin from the gear through, because it's recessed into this plastic housing, which is going to make your life really difficult. You can't pull the gear out. You have to push the pin through and then lift the gear out, drop the new one in, and then push the pin back. You might have to actually break this glue down here for this standoff, which is the alignment for the other end of the eccentric, and slide everything out and then do it. That might be the easiest, truthfully. Then when you put it back together, line up the pin on this up and down eccentric, and then hot glue that back into place and hold it till it hardens, whatever that is, 30 seconds. And then test it. Make sure that the ghost goes up and down freely without binding. You can see I can move it by manipulating the ghost. Make sure it stays inside the groove in this plastic. So, best case, it's a broken worm gear, and we find a worm gear from those different kits you can get on Amazon. I put my kits into one big bucket, but it does come with them. This is way large, of course, but it does come with several of them, different shapes and sizes. This is a double gear. So, actually, I think this is the one that this piece takes. Let's check. This is that Aoki eye. I've showed it in a few other videos. Amazon sells. It's some weird name. It's a whole bunch of different hobby gears. And yes, this is the gear. So if you have this piece and that breaks, this $9 pack of gears, which there's 2 of those packs in here, so this is actually like 20 bucks, has the actual gear that goes onto the ghost. That's if it's the little gear. If it's the big gear, it's going to have to be fabricable. So, it's not the greatest news, but it is at least attemptable and technically can be repaired. So I'm going to push my eccentric back on, and I'm going to plug it in and make sure it still functions. Which it does not. So maybe I put the eccentric on too tight. Let's see. pushed my eccentric too far down, so the other gear was pressing against the disc, not just the teeth. So apparently be careful. Don't push it on too far. You might have to pull it back up a hair to make sure you still have full motion. So apparently the motor-driven system affects the tree lights, black lights, and the ghosts. That if your motor system has failed from a solder joint or probably a defective motor, you're going to lose your power. I have another loose connection in here on the circuit board. Okay. So, check your connections if you're having a failure of motion or light. I found it by accident by wiggling the wire. You might just wiggle with your thumb or your finger. I have a connection on the back of the circuit board right here that's bad. It's this green wire. It's coming out. So I'm going to have to break the glue and resolder it. If you're having a problem with the ghost motion, and it's not going up and down, or it's clacking badly, you probably broke the gear, which I showed you how to get to. If you don't have any motion, but you hear the motor, you probably broke or spun the belt. And if your wobble going back and forth is bad, you lost the drive to the eccentric. So, now, I just need to get the circuit board free of the glue, fix that bad connection, so that way it doesn't continue to turn off and on me. And this can go back into the display. You already saw a little sneak preview of my display I put up a few days ago, or actually probably be a week or so before this even. But okay, make sure you put this back on the correct way, because that battery pack will hit the motor. So good thing that piece broke off, and I could tell. You might want to mark it with something, a Sharpie, or cut a line into it with a razor knife or something, so you know that this side and this side line up. Because the battery box will hit that drive mechanism. So yeah, it goes back on like that. So it's not a very hard piece to work on. It will be if you break the gears inside the gearbox and you have to remove that gearbox to get to it. Hopefully yours isn't like mine, where there's a drop of melted solder that melted through the plastic top, because you can actually access it without breaking all that glue free. This is a multi-base platform, so if you ever open yours, you'll see the glue lines and the screw lines where they can use this platform for different bases, circular bases as well as square. And knowing all this, you can replace almost everything in here, especially if you lose these little orange lights in the tree. They seem like they'd be really difficult to fix. The wires just wrap around the tree itself. If you look closely, you'll see the wires wrapped around. You technically can solder a new LED if it burns out to the wire, or you can feed it all the way back up the trunk. Personally, I would just solder an LED to the wire and hit it with some green paint or green nail polish or a green heat shrink to try and blend it in. That's me. I don't want to fish excess amounts of wire through the components or through the center, especially because of this tree. It's less that you have to break, and if you lose a light, you don't have to actually open the unit. You can do it from up above. The two UV lights, though, if one of those goes out, yes, you will have to do it from inside. They have a hole that they drill through that the two leads come through, and then there's some glue on the backside to hold it in place. And you'll lose a little bit of moss, but that's not a big deal. It flakes off all the time. All you gotta do is just glue the piece back on, or God, if you have any of their original mats, their old school mats, that stuff sheds. And you can buy moss by the bag at any craft store or hobby store. Or you can put fake bushes, because I think they should have put a little fake bush or something here, or two small headstones that are broke, so you don't see these lights, so they're behind. That's me. Like that little rock piece, they should have put one here and one here, so when you're looking at it from the front at night on the dark, you don't see the UV light sticking out. But again, it's an older piece. I don't remember the name, but if I do, I'm going to put it in the title. Because I can't remember what it was. I just know I bought it a couple years ago from somebody who was selling a lot of Lemax and other animated house stuff, and it was in one of their boxes, and I didn't have it. I thought it was kind of cool, but I didn't realize over the past 2 years I've had it out, 3 years thereabouts, that I lost my functions due to a broken wire. So, but here we go. I get to fix one of my pieces because I don't get to fix mine very often, mainly because I have so many that are sent to me. Currently I have 40, that's 40, of other people's stuff sitting here that I've been trying to work on as I can find parts to fix them. So anyhow, thanks for watching. Hopefully this helps anybody out there that has this one or something similar to get into the bottom 4 screws and possibly diagnose a lack of power, lack of motion, or you have a burned out light, and different ways to address how to fix them without damaging your unit itself. So, until the next one, thanks for watching.